39 bodies, neatly arranged on bunk beds and mattresses, each covered with a purple shroud, black Nike decades on their feet. It was March 1997 in Rancho Santa Fe, California, and the world was about to learn the name Heaven's Gate. But this wasn't just another cult gone wrong story. This was the first mass suicide to be live-streamed, in a sense, by the early internet. It was a twisted combination of ancient doomsday thinking and cutting-edge technology that most people were only beginning to understand. So how did one soft-spoken music teacher from Texas convince dozens of people to abandon their families, surrender their identities, and take their own lives? To answer that, we have to go all the way back to where it started. And we're getting into it right now on the Anything History Channel. What if a cult isn't a group of crazed, raving lunatics living on a commune in the middle of nowhere? What if a cult is just people, just like you and me, looking for something to believe in, something more than a life of quiet desperation? The scene in that Rancho Santa Fe mansion on March 26, 1997, was anything but quiet. It was a tableau of absolute, terrifying order. 39 bodies. 39 souls who had packed their bags, put on matching outfits, and drank a final fatal cocktail in an almost serene ritual. But what they didn't tell you about Applewhite and the Heaven's Gate cult is that this story didn't start with a comet. It started with a man's secret struggle, a nurse's spiritual searching, and a terrifyingly logical conclusion that was over 20 years in the making. To understand the end, we have to start at the beginning.
This is a very exciting time for us. Who is us? I'm Doe, for starters, and I have in front of me a number of students, or my classroom, or in old language, a couple thousand years ago, disciples, those who are trying to prepare themselves for entry into the evolutionary level above human, synonymous with the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
Marshall Applewhite was born in Texas in 1931, the son of a strict Presbyterian minister. He was a talented kid, a gifted musician. He went to college, got a degree, and even enrolled in seminary school to follow in his father's footsteps. But it wasn't the pulpit that called him. It was a stage. Applewhite became a music professor, a theatrical baritone. By all accounts, he was charismatic, charming, even stylish. He had a family, a wife and 2 children. He seemed to have it all. But beneath the surface of this all-American life, a different kind of storm was brewing. Applewhite was a deeply conflicted man, struggling with his repressed homosexuality in a time and place that offered no forgiveness. This internal war, this profound sense of being an outsider in his own skin, gnawed at him. By the late 60s and early 70s, his life was unraveling. He lost his teaching job. His marriage fell apart. He checked himself into a hospital, desperate for help. He spoke of hearing voices, of a nervous breakdown. He was a man adrift, a man looking for a higher purpose to replace the one that had been rejected, both by society and, perhaps, by himself. Enter Bonnie Nettles, a registered nurse, a mother of 4. She was also a seeker, a woman who had grown up in a Baptist home, but had long since traded Sunday sermons for spiritualism. She was a theosophist who believed in reincarnation, a channeler who claimed to receive messages from a 19th century monk she called Brother Francis. And here's where the story gets strange. A chance meeting in a Houston hospital in 1972. Applewhite, the tormented ex-professor. Nettles, the mystical nurse. They bonded instantly, feeling a cosmic recognition. They saw in each other not just a friend, but a soulmate. They would later come to believe they were the 2 witnesses from the book of Revelation. 2 lost people, each with a fractured view of reality, finding in the other a perfect mirror. They soon started a bookstore, teaching classes on mysticism and the occult. But this was just the beginning. In 1975, they decided their mission was bigger than a bookstore. They had to leave everything behind. They adopted new names, Bo and Peep, then Doe and T. And they began traveling the country, preaching a new gospel. Their message was a bizarre fusion of Christian theology, UFO mythology, and science fiction. Jesus, they claimed, was an alien from a higher evolutionary level. He ascended to heaven not in a cloud, but in a spacecraft. And T and Do were here to recruit a new crew to do the same. And here's the insidious part. It wasn't a call for spiritual self-improvement. It was a call to abandon everything. Your family, a distraction. Your sexuality, a barrier. Your physical body itself, just a vehicle. The core of the cult was total renunciation. And thousands of people from all walks of life answered that call. Teachers, programmers, artists, seekers. They sold their possessions, cut ties with their families, and followed Do and T into the wilderness, waiting for the spaceship that would never come. But in the early 1980s, the cult was dealt a catastrophic blow. The woman known as T. Bonnie Nettles was diagnosed with cancer. The woman who claimed to be immortal, the guiding spiritual force of the group, was now dying. How could this be? The man known as Do, Marshall Applewhite, had to adapt. He explained to his followers that T's body was simply a broken vehicle. She had graduated and was waiting for them on the next level. And this is where the doctrine takes a truly chilling turn. With T gone, Applewhite became the sole authority. The belief that the body was just a vehicle became the central focus. And this obsession with purging the physical self led to some truly disturbing acts. Several of the male followers, including Applewhite himself, underwent castration, believing it was the ultimate act of purification to become androgynous beings. After years of living in seclusion, their belief system hardened, and their community grew smaller and more insulated, but they weren't entirely cut off. In the mid-1990s, they found a new, powerful tool to spread their message and earn money: the internet. Under the name Higher Source, the Heaven's Gate cult ran a web design business. Let that sink in for a minute. These people, who had renounced the physical world and were preparing to die, were on the cutting edge of a new technology. They built websites for businesses, even a Catholic organization. The irony, the sheer disconnect, is profoundly unsettling. They were interacting with the world on a daily basis, all while preparing to leave it forever. It's a detail that was largely lost in the media frenzy, but it speaks volumes about their bizarre existence. And then in 1996, the cosmic sign they had waited for appeared in the night sky. Comet Hale Bopp, a rare, spectacular celestial event. The rumor, picked up on early internet forums and bulletin boards, was that a UFO was trailing the comet, a companion spacecraft. For Applewhite and his followers, this wasn't rumor. It was a signal. It was their graduation. Their mission was finally at an end. It was time to leave their vehicles behind. They rented that mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, believing they were preparing for an exodus, not a mass suicide. They meticulously planned every detail, filming final farewells, packing bags with essentials for their journey. They ate their last meal at Marie Callender's, salads, pies, iced tea, then returned to their mansion in Rancho Santa Fe. Over 3 days, they consumed phenobarbital mixed with applesauce and vodka, placed plastic bags over their heads, and covered themselves with purple shrouds. They died in 3 waves, helping each other to the next level. And they left behind a website, still online today, a chilling digital monument to their ultimate faith. When authorities entered the house, what they found was like a scene from a horror film. 39 bodies, perfectly arranged, each with a suitcase packed at their side, as if they were really going somewhere. Heaven's Gate is remembered as a bizarre footnote of the 90s, but the reality is much darker. This was the first mass suicide orchestrated with the help of the internet. And if this kind of control could be achieved with dial-up modems and GeoCities-era websites, what does that mean for the technology we're using today? Applewhite convinced 39 intelligent, ordinary people that death was a doorway. He turned isolation into loyalty and loyalty into annihilation. They didn't see themselves as victims. They saw themselves as survivors. They were just trying to get home. But their journey reveals something much darker about the human condition, a desperate need for belonging, for purpose, for a narrative that makes sense of a confusing, lonely world. Was Marshall Applewhite a madman, or a tragically wounded man who found a terrifyingly logical solution to his own pain? Was Heaven's Gate an evil cult, or a desperate community of seekers who just wanted to believe in something that made sense? Anything. The lines get blurry. And that's the real lesson here. The most dangerous ideas aren't the ones that come out of nowhere. They're the ones that start as a whisper inside, a little voice asking questions, and grow into a chorus so loud you can't hear anything else. So we'll leave you with this question. If Applewhite had access to the tools we take for granted now, would Heaven's Gate have just been the beginning? Thanks for watching the Anything History channel. If you found this story important, help us keep telling the ones that others won't. And remember, history isn't always in the past.